Pat Barrett now on Women's Radio and on YouTube. And I am so happy to have with me today Christine Baumgartner. Now, Christine and I, you'd have to say, met by accident, but we've already discovered we must have been together in other lifetimes. We have had such a good time even before we're getting to share with you. But Christine is an expert on relationships. And as relationships are so important to us, I am so delighted that she's agreed to be my guest today. Now, let me tell you a little bit about her background. She was a coach with John Gray, who is the guy that wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Now, I know a lot of people in the audience now probably never even heard of John Gray, but almost all of us have heard about his book. And from there, she has become a worldwide coach on relationships and does a lot of work on the internet in the web. And she answers some very, very important questions for people. Now, first, let me introduce Christine Baumgartner. Welcome, Christine.
Hello, Pat. It's such a pleasure. This has been so fun getting to know you better and finding out all of our connections. And I'm so excited to share some hopefully helpful information to all the women that listen to your podcasts.
Well, one of the things that you said that really struck me as being, wow, that is so true. And not just, I guess, in our love life, but maybe in lots of areas, is that sometimes we are the last person to see that we ourselves, in some way or another, are putting an obstacle in the way, in the direct path of what we say we want. And a lot of times that is a loving relationship in one form or another, but particularly in the form of a companion or mate or husband or whatever. And for the men, that can also be true. So I would love for you to start there and tell us how you go about helping people identify what they're doing that is keeping love away.
It is such an important question, and it really is pretty foundational. And when people ask me how I became a coach, this is the story I tell them because it answers that question. I was married at 18 and divorced at 32. And I tell people I did puberty in my 30s and 40s because I dated like a crazy person because I hadn't dated before I met my first husband when I was 16. So my friends would say, what do you think of the guys you're dating? And I dated really nice guys and we did lots of really fun things. But I was really clear that I wouldn't marry any of them, which was fine with me because I wasn't in the mood to get married. And then I turned 50 and I thought, I think I really am ready to get married now. And I announced that to all my single friends. And then online dating was starting. It had been out a couple years and I had a girlfriend that was joining. And so we joined. And what was fun is that men were much braver and they just got on and there were not as enough women. So they were offering free memberships to all the women. So we just jumped right on. And now I had even more men to date. And my friends would say, so how is it now? And I go, oh my gosh, I'm meeting even more fascinating men and I wouldn't marry any of them either. And finally I said, that's kind of terrible if I keep saying I want to get married and I keep dating men that I wouldn't marry. So let's just figure out what it is I wouldn't marry about them. Because I would go next. So when I really looked at it, I found that I owned a very successful event planning company and was very conscious of setting up a retirement and savings. And I was dating men who they had really good jobs. They made really good money, but they had no savings or retirement. And I'd say, gosh, how do you take us on these great vacations? And they say, you get those credit card forms in the mail. And I would just fill out a new one, which is made me uncomfortable about considering marrying any of them. And I live in this big metropolitan area. And why was I sitting across the table consistently from men who had this thing that I say doesn't match me, but they all had this trait? So finally I had to say, oh, maybe it has a little to do with me, but it had a lot to do with me. So I went to some therapy and I put myself through a process. And what I discovered was my dad and my first husband were these wild entrepreneurs and they made lots of money and had no money to show for it. So in my brain back here, I hadn't thought about it consciously at all. That was the kind of man I was used to being around. I knew what to do about them. I knew how to handle them. And I even believed that that's all I deserved. So once I worked through that and discovered that wasn't who I was anymore, the very next man that sat across the table from me made money and had money.
Ah,
I said,
proof of the
"Really, could it be
pudding.
that easy? So let's see what else traits I'm attracting." Because now I felt empowered. Before I felt like, ew, does that make me a terrible person? No, it makes
Right.
me a proactive person. So then I worked on the next trait that men were showing up with that I needed to readjust inside of me. And they didn't have that next trait. So now my friends are saying, so what do you think of the guys that you're dating now? I go, they have way more of the traits that I would marry. And they said, well, what did you do? And I go, I came up with this process and I'm not sure it'll work for anybody else, but go try it. And it worked for them and they started dating better. So then when I met and married my now late husband, one of my best stories is we met in October of 2005. We went on a cruise in 2006. And on the cruise, he gave me two presents I didn't ask for. One was diamond stud earrings, and the other was his credit report. And I said,
Wow.
Tony, why would you give me your credit report? Because I'd never asked. And he said, well, because I kept adjusting my profile as I was adjusting the inside of me. He said, I read how financially stable you are and that it's really important to you to have a man that is. And since I'm falling in love with you, I want you to see that I am.
Uh-huh.
So that was such good confirmation that I had adjusted that thinking inside of me. So then after I married him, my friends are all like, you really should tell other people besides your friends. So that's when I became a coach. And it's
Uh-huh.
been part of my practice the whole time for these past 15 years to look at what are the patterns. If you are having patterns in your life of people that show up that don't want make a commitment, that people who don't want to spend enough time with you, people who are angry, whatever the trait is that's not allowing you to fall in love and feel comfortable with them, it's usually us. If it's happening over, it's just one person, it's one off. But if it's consistent, it's what we're think we deserve. It's what we're used to. It's unconscious. So what I help people do is date differently by bringing everything consciously forward and saying, does this still work for you? Because I discovered that wasn't working for me anymore. And how do we adjust it? And the what happened for me is what happens for my clients. The different kind of people who show up now is so quick and they're amazed, but you have to feel like you're worth it and you qualify. And part of the process I put women through is to get really clear about what a gift you are and why a guy needs to deserve to be with you. And too often we're paying attention to, do they like us? Are they treating us well? Well, no. Do we like them? Are we clear about how they're treating us? And do we need to ask for a different way of being treated so that we're taking our power back in the most feminine way? So often we women have to get kind of tough when we aren't sure
Yes.
how to stick up for ourselves
Right.
or how to keep men that aren't good for us away. And when I teach you how to do that more smoothly, you get softer, you get more feminine, you start feeling so much more in your feminine power, which is really attractive to the right kind of men. Because the right kind of men don't
Yes.
like us when we're feeling all hard, but we felt hard because we've been attracting or not attracting anybody. We attract the wrong people or we don't attract anybody, which makes us feel even more guarded and more firm and more harsh.
Right.
And that's not how we feel our best. It's really not. So did that answer your question?
It really was a great answer. And what occurs to me is that probably this is true with just about any kind of relationship. I mean, obviously, we are concerned when we, as you suggest, when you keep dating this or attracting the same people to date, people that you wouldn't consider marrying, and you think, well, what's going on with that? But it probably there is a relationship or other relationships that we have in our lives, and we're doing kind of the same thing. Like we have certain kinds of friends, maybe that we attracted when we were younger, that for certain reasons that don't even exist now, but we're still acting in the same ways. It don't you think it's difficult for us to identify those things ourselves? I mean, you mentioned that you went to a coach when you were beginning to ask those questions. that sometimes it helps to talk with people that aren't so involved in our lives, that can help us see things that are difficult for us to accept, just to move those obstacles out of the way.
That is such a good point, Pat, because sometimes we'll see our friends and go, wow, if they only saw this. Often it's what we'll say is they don't understand how beautiful they are, how intelligent they are, or how lovely they are. They're not believing that, even
I
how
think that's
sad is
true.
that,
Mhm.
as well as some things that might be off-putting or don't show them in their best light. And as you mentioned, I have a couple processes I put my clients through that everything I give them is something I did for myself first. I was my very first client. So I have a thing that's called dating for friends, and it really is for friends, and it's concentric circles. So the outside circle is what the minimum is somebody has to have to be your friend. For me, it's
Uh-huh.
nice. They have to be nice to me, nice to the people around me. Then they are allowed to put their feet on the outside circle. And there's concentric circles with different criteria that gets to the middle circle, which is my heart. Because I used to just put my heart out there to any old buddy. And it turned out they weren't the right people to be with my heart, but they were fine to be out here farther. And so the people I've worked with, that they have all these people in their life, and then they start sorting them on the circles. There's some people that you will need to let go, but others, if you just put them on a more appropriate circle, they stop disappointing you. They stop upsetting you, that
Right.
you can do this thing with them, or you can do these things with them, but you just can't do the more intimate thing with them. And so the part that I keep hearing from my clients that I didn't expect, but has been a wonderful bonus, is that their relationships with their children, their parents, their colleagues, their friends have improved by working with, I didn't know this about me. I didn't know this was keeping me held back. I didn't know this was
Right.
hiding my light under a bushel. I didn't know that I was letting people take advantage of me.
Right.
I didn't know I needed this, and I didn't know how to ask for it. So it's a lot of what I do in my coaching that helps people adjust this. So what I tell people, generally, you're not going to change who you are. You're just going to become better at more of what you are.
I
Because
think that's the perfect answer. It's
yeah,
hard.
who you
It's
are is
hard to
lovely
see.
already. Let's just make some adjustments.
Right,
Expand.
right, right. Yeah, and in the process of doing that, I think we come to really love and appreciate ourselves a lot more. Oh wow, I didn't realize that was just an obstacle I could push out of my way. It's
Yeah.
not really who I was.
No. And our families doing their best, taught us to think certain ways about ourselves, that some of them are positive and not so positive. And there was nothing we could do about it as a child. But now, as a grown adult, we have choices that we don't always know. So I want you to see it's a buffet, or a whole line of screwdrivers at Home Depot. Don't you look at that whole row of screwdrivers like, why would anybody need all those screwdrivers? But everybody needs at least one of them, if not two. So when you come to me, I sort it out, and we come up with what tools are in your toolbox that are working great. What are some tools that you could use some help doing? And some that just need to be gone because they're not helpful anymore. And then we're going to add some additional ones that you didn't know you needed.
Well, Christine, I've just had this great thought. I really, really like you to come back again. That really, in terms of relationships, there is so much to talk about. And then people, because we're all individuals, we have different problems or different issues that we are trying to resolve, or different pieces of lumber we're trying to push out of our way.
Yeah.
And I would really like our audience to be able to participate and be able to ask you some questions that we could answer. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to work to create a way to allow the people who are listening to this interview to be able to send us some questions in advance of the next time that you'll come and visit us, and we'll announce that. We'll let people know the next time that they can come and be with us together and get their questions answered. I just think that will be a whole lot of fun, and I think we'll all have wonderful learning experiences that aren't dreadful and to be avoided, but to find this out in a safe space so that we can be the greater us in the future.
Because when we're the greater us, then we have all these extra gifts we can give all the people around us. And then if
Absolutely.
we help in our families and our communities and our state and our country and our world, it's exponentially makes things better if we just start with us.
I am so in favor of that. I mean, it's taken me a while to realize that the best thing I can do is to stay in a happier state.
Yep.
And if that means giving up the news, or it means not hanging out with certain people as much as I used to do, or whatever that is, that it is worth my showing up, being a happier, more attentive person and friend. But it's a process, and I think that it would be better if we could hurry up that process a little bit and reach out and help other people as you're doing,
Yeah.
and pass some of this good information along so we could all live in a happier world.
I like that goal a lot. And we'll help people do
Great.
it faster, right?
So you'll come back.
I will be so happy to come back. And I have to tell you what a pleasure and a delight this has been. And I really look forward to the questions from your listeners. This will be
Oh,
great.
I do too. I do too. I am so happy and grateful that you had time to be with us today. And we will certainly look forward to your coming back very soon.
And I know you have a really smart audience, so they're going to ask us really cool questions.
It's true. It's true. And I do think that people, just like you were going through, like you were going through a lot of people, it didn't occur to you for quite a while that what it was, where the boulder was, so to speak, or that there even was the boulder. So, when you hear stories like the ones that you were telling, then then the people who are listening can say, oh, yeah, I think I may have done that once or twice, or I had some friends that I really realized were not helping, really didn't have my best interest at heart. Why did I attract people like that? And I love the people who've taught me that life is not a question of assertion. It's a question of attraction, that you can't turn around and say, oh, it's that person. That person was just not a good person, or that person has an ego problem, or that person has a personality defect. It's the boulder in your path, so
It
that
really
you have to come to grips with.
Such a good point. Well, thank you so much. This has been delightful.
It has been. Thank you, and
It's
we'll
been
look
so
forward to.
quick and so fun. We'll look
I
forward to
know, I
doing
know.
it again.
We will. Maybe we'll get to do it often. That would be
I'd
even
love that.
more.
Okay. Thanks
Thank
a
you,
bunch.
Christine.